Paramahansa Yogananda, Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai. Paramahansa Yogananda, Jai Guru Jai. Paramahansa Yogananda, Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai. Paramahansa Yogananda, Jai Guru Jai. Paramahansa Yogananda, Jai Guru Jai. We start with a prayer. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God, great gurus, preceptors of all ages, we humbly bow to you all. Thank you for blessing this class and raising our vibrations. Om Shanti Shanti. So I'll start from where we left off, okay? This was page 196, Sujata.
Yeah, last paragraph, page 196.
Page 196, last paragraph, which is God is impersonal or thus to visualize perfect love?
God is impersonal, second last.
God is impersonal. Okay. So we were in the middle of the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, where I think Arjuna started with asking, you know, what is the right action, went into what is karmic action and what causes karma and what kind of behavior brings us out of karma. And currently, Krishna has gone into explaining how people offer themselves to the Supreme. It may be through pujas and rituals, it may be through meditation, whatever. So there is a whole list of things of what people do in order not to fall into the karmic trap. Okay. God is impersonal, right?
Yeah.
So it says, this is Swamiji's explanation of the sloka. God is impersonal with mankind, however, he is also very personal, closer to us than our very thoughts. The reason he doesn't respond every time we call him is, as my guru put it, he knows most people only want to argue with him. So what does it mean? God is impersonal, yet he is personal. So in the bigger picture of things, yes, God is impersonal. It is an impersonal energy which has, it is not bound in ego. What is personal versus impersonal? Something which is bound by ego and something which is not, which is boundless, right? So in that sense, God is impersonal. But how is he personal? He is personal because if we are still in our ego, we can only perceive God as ourselves. That's why we need pictures. That's why we need gurus. That's why we need rituals, okay? Because we are unable to understand the infinite in that sense. So we need intermediaries. So we have lesser gods. So we have masters and gurus who have to come and become windows to the infinite. And we make God personal by calling to him as mother, by calling to him or it or whatever you like to say as father. Like our prayer just now, I said, Divine Mother, Heavenly Father. We need to personalize God. Otherwise, we are unable to relate to God, to that vastness and the infinity, which we will only be able to do once we are self-realized, once we have realized our own God self and we have merged into that energy. Okay. So Swamiji says that Yogananda used to say that God is wanting to come to us, but he does not really respond every time because we argue with him. So what does that mean? Because we don't understand the big picture. We don't have enough faith or enough patience to wait for things to manifest. So if we want something, say we want, what would you say? At a very core materialistic level or whatever our dreams are. Say we want to be the CEO of a massive company. Okay. Now God will give everything. But there, I can't just say I want to be the CEO of a huge corporation and then expect it to happen tomorrow. What is going to happen? It will manifest. If we have faith, what is going to happen is now the universe will start sending us lessons to raise our vibrations to be able to be a CEO. I cannot be a trainee one day and say, you know, I want the corner office. I am simply not ready spiritually, mentally, emotionally. But the universe has heard your prayers. It is organizing all the forces. It never denies us anything. But we have to understand that it is a process. And in 3 months' time, oh, I said I want to be a CEO and I'm not yet and I don't believe in it. I've changed my dream and I have lost faith in God, or I'm arguing with God. You said you'll give me everything. This is what everybody says. It's not coming. The point is, vibrationally, we have to be ready to receive that. And that requires faith. It will come. And we have to understand that currently, my energies are not equal to that. And if we know how to, we also know how to see signs that it is happening. Certain incidents will start happening in your life. You will meet certain challenges. You will meet certain people, which will take you step by step. But if in month 3, I have lost faith, I have moved my dream somewhere else, it's never going to happen. And I keep chopping and changing instead of having the faith that the universe is bringing it to me in the right divine timing. If I don't understand that and I lose faith, then I can say at the end of my life, I wanted so many things, none of them happened. That's because I didn't have faith enough to hold a steady vision that this is what I want and to trust that, yes, it is coming, but I have to be ready. Okay, that is why some manifestations don't happen immediately. That's because you are expected to raise your vibration. And if you are aware enough, you will see the exact lessons are coming to move you into that vibration, right? Thus, to visualize perfect love, for example, in a form which the human mind can comprehend, may mean to worship him as the Divine Mother, or as one's ideal beloved, or as one's perfect friend. This is what I said a little before, that we need to personalize God. God is not personal, God is impersonal. But for our understanding, we need to give God a form and an idea in our head to which we can relate to. Whatever quality most attracts the heart's devotion can be mentally clothed in a form that for the individual worshipper epitomizes or expresses that quality. So whatever triggers in you the heart's devotion, if the ideal father triggers in you the heart's devotion, if the ideal mother triggers in you the heart's devotion, if the ideal lover or the ideal friend triggers in you the heart's devotion, then that is how you need to look at God. Because without devotion, as I keep saying, you may do all the techniques in the world without opening the heart, without devotion, we are not going to go very far on the spiritual path. The deeper one goes in devotion, especially after receiving some answer in his heart from God, the more whatever form he has visualized fades into formlessness as the state of consciousness behind what one has been visualizing is gradually perceived to be the reality above form. So, okay, we may start to connect to God as father, mother, friend, or beloved. But once we start going deeper and deeper into devotion, and we really start connecting to that infinite energy, we no longer need a form. We are able to understand the nature of the infinite. What does it mean when we connect to that energy? It means what? With our devotion, we have raised our vibration. So we are moving towards our own God self. We are starting to drop our ego. And as we start to drop our ego and move more and more towards our own God self, that infinity does not need a form anymore. We understand the true nature of God. Paramahansa Yogananda gave further advice on this subject. Whenever God comes to you in form, as let us say the Divine Mother, try to see in those eyes not a human personality, but the consciousness of infinity. So even when the gurus talk to us, they actually say to really attune to the guru in meditation, look into the eyes of the guru. And in those eyes, you will perceive infinity. So Swami Kriyananda also used to say that Master used to be very playful, very humble, very ordinary, very human. But suddenly, if you looked into his eyes, you would see that his eyes are completely impersonal. They reflect the infinite source. That is because masters are always connected to source. And through the eyes are to be treated as windows to God. They do come as a person encased in egoic form so that people can relate. But once you start connecting with the master and you start attuning with the master, you will see in his eyes that infinity. So Yogananda used to say, I killed Yogananda a long time ago. Nothing dwells here but God. So what does he mean? He says, my ego is not here anymore. The person that is Yogananda does not really exist. I am simply a channel for that infinite ray of light. Okay. The fact that Krishna in this stanza refers to yogis and not to ordinary devotees. So which stanza? We started from a stanza and we are carrying on with the explanation. This stanza. Some yogis there are who make sacrifices to the devas or deities. Others see sacrifice or yajna as an offering of the self into the cosmic fire of spirit. So this is the stanza. The fact that Krishna in this stanza refers to yogis and not to ordinary devotees suggests that he is speaking of the various forms in which sincere seekers worship the Supreme Lord. He would not describe yogis whose goal is union with God as worshipping astral gods to whom ordinary people appeal primarily for ego gratifying boons. So what are a yogi is very clear. He is simply interested in God realization. Other devotees are still worldly. They still have worldly needs. They still have egos. They still have desires and dreams of worldly success, worldly happiness. So these are the people, ordinary deities, who worship the lesser gods. Who are these lesser gods? These are beings on the astral plane, and they do have certain powers. And if you pray to them with rituals and pujas and things, they can grant you certain material benefits. But a yogi is not interested in all that. To the yogi, the main thing is straight union with God or nothing else. Okay. There is also a deeper meaning in this passage. In yoga practice, the meditator offers his kundalini up to the devas or powers residing in the chakras, that all his energy may flow up the spine towards unity with God in the Sahasrara or thousand-rayed lotus at the top of the head. So what is the deeper meaning? Basically, what people do in yogic practices or meditative practices, what are we doing? With the breath work that we do, we are awakening each of the chakras. Chakras are energy centers or vortices in the astral spine, in the energy body. And each chakra has a certain power. And sometimes the danger to a devotee is that we can get caught up with these powers. We can start to meditate to gain siddhis or powers, and we can forget that our real goal is actually to move towards God. These powers in the chakras, when you're raising the kundalini force up, they are a natural side effect, shall we say, of trying to reach God. These powers will come, and as you awaken each chakra, certain powers come and certain powers go away also. At some point, you will be very, very successful monetarily. Suppose you have empowered your solar plexus chakra. But as you move higher and higher, maybe your artistic sensibilities will start to flower. If you are activating your throat chakra, maybe you become a brilliant singer. After some time, you realize, no, actually, I have gone beyond the singing phase. I am now a teacher, or now I am a sage. I am an intuitive person. So with every chakra, certain powers are activated. And it is a warning that do not get caught up in that. If your final goal is to reach God, then you take these powers with a pinch of salt and not get too caught up. Because what will happen if you get caught up with your powers that you have, then you will again go into ego and you can slide down several steps that you have made so much effort to come. Now you feel very powerful, and now you feel, okay, with this power in whatever field it is, I can influence people, I can manipulate people, I can become more and more powerful. Then you have gone into ego again. So that is a warning that do not go into that. Okay. So what are we trying to do? We are actually trying to raise the Kundalini power up to the Sahasrara. The Sahasrara chakra is the crown chakra, which is seen as a 1,000-petal lotus. So each of the petals start opening with enlightenment. And now 426 verse. Other spiritual seekers offer their inner power of hearing and of their other senses into the fire of self-control. Still others offer whatever they hear or experience through the senses into the fire of higher understanding. So people who are evolved enough are going to offer the inner power of hearing. What is the inner power of hearing? Inner power of hearing and of their other senses. These are actually the special powers that you get. What would be the inner power of hearing? When you can actually hear messages from the masters. You will get clear messages. That is an inner power of hearing, or inner power of seeing. Suppose you have an intuitive vision that this is what has happened or this is going to happen. Those are the inner powers. So that spiritual seekers higher up in the path, they don't get caught up in that. They offer all that into the fire of self-control. They are not going to be deviated from their quest for God by getting distracted by all these inner powers. And of course, the outer powers, like your still others offer whatever they hear or experience through the senses. So the outer powers are people who are a little less mature on the spiritual path. They can offer up the outer powers, which is your material wealth, which is your whatever you have in this world. You can actually give it up into the fire of higher understanding. You are still trying to understand what is the right way to move through the world. More is involved, it must be said, in offering the ego into the fire of cosmic consciousness than the mere thought of doing so, even as more is involved in conquering a mountain than simply leaping to the top. So obviously, to connect to cosmic consciousness requires a lot of purification of the personality. The personality has to start to recede, and the higher consciousness has to start taking its place before we can connect to super consciousness or cosmic consciousness. So just by thinking that I want this is not going to happen. Even as more is involved in conquering a mountain than simply leaping to the top. So there are many, many steps and stages and trials and things in between. This stanza and several more that follow cover this subject in a variety of ways. Each one is a means of offering up the ego into superconscious expansion. So the whole thing of the spiritual path is, of course, to dissolve the ego, right? The whole understanding of the spiritual path is that we are all one energy, but in order to understand our own God nature, we have signed up to come into the world of duality in a form which is exactly opposite to who we really are. We are formless, we are vast, we are infinite, but we have agreed to take on a body, to take on an ego, to take on the illusion of separateness. Because in understanding the true nature of separateness and limitedness, only in understanding what we are not, can we understand what we really are. So the whole drama of life is simply this. We are learning through experiences in limitedness we are overcoming those challenges and finally rediscovering, remembering, that's divine memory, that's Smriti. We are remembering who we really are, which is God. So each one is a means of offering up the ego into superconscious expansion. So the ego is contraction, superconsciousness is expansion. And that is why we always want more and more and more. If we start stagnating in a certain phase of our life and we don't grow because of ego fear, if we have stopped expanding, what will happen? We will start contracting, which is unnatural. We will lose our energy. We will lose our will to learn. We will also lose our will to live. We will probably manufacture a disease and die because we are no longer learning. Learning means expansion. So if we are not expanding, then we don't last very long in the world. Okay? We prefer to die and come back in another body because in this body it has not been possible. 427, others by discrimination offer up their sense activities and the energy within those activities in the fires of self-control. So once we have started to develop our discriminatory powers, that is somewhere we have raised our energy to the higher chakras, to the spiritual eye or to the third eye. And now we can discriminate. We can see what is the right path, how to get out of repetitive patterns, which we are in the same pattern, repeat, not learning the lesson. But most people cannot understand those things. But when the discrimination develops through wisdom, through experience, we realize that these are some of the things, these are some of the activities, these are some of the behaviors that I need to simply drop. Can I give it up into the fires of self-control instead of constantly sliding back into the same pattern? And that is only possible when we have developed a certain amount of discrimination. Now they start to ask themselves, who is seeing, who is hearing, whose energy is activating me to experience these sensations? Once the discrimination develops, we begin to realize that behind our physical body, behind the person who is constantly in and out of drama, there is a higher consciousness which actually knows where we are going and where we should be going. So that is our higher self. We start to ask, but if I am giving up my ego, if I am giving up my activities and my, whatever I perceive through my senses, who's the I? Who's it who's giving all this up? We start to get glimmerings of I am that. I am that God. It is the God consciousness in me which is encouraging me to give up these things of the ego. This method of offering ego consciousness up to cosmic expansion comes down to the question finally, who am I? First one asks, who is this that is eating? Who walks when my body walks? Who really is breathing? Who thinks? Who is reacting with positive or negative feelings? Who is asking these questions? And finally, again, who am I? So what is it or who is it that is powering all this growth? This is the approach of Jnana Yoga, the path of discrimination. So there are 4 yogic approaches. One is Jnana Yoga, which is discrimination and knowledge. One is Bhakti Yoga, which is devotion and love. One is Karma Yoga, which is the path of service. And one is Kriya Yoga, which is the path of meditation. Okay, all four we need to reach self-realization. Right. This is the approach of Jnana Yoga, the path of discrimination. But it is one that everyone should include in his sadhana or spiritual practice. Watch yourself eating, walking, breathing, conversing, thinking. Stand mentally aside from your own body and mind. Become the silent observer of your own self. Gradually, you will feel inwardly detached and will accept that you are another reality entirely, the divine soul merely dreaming everything that happens outside of it. So the witness consciousness develops. We are able to stand a little apart from the continuous daily drama. And when we are able to stand apart, we can actually observe ourselves feeling angry, observe ourselves feeling happy or sad. And that means we are no longer entangled in the world of duality. We are understanding, we are being able to connect to our higher self. And that is when, in the meditation class, people say we are not reacting so much. We have become calmer. Things which would have triggered me off 2 weeks ago are no longer doing that. It is because we are developing that slight detachment. We are learning to observe ourselves and knowing that this ego encased body, which is doing stuff, is not the real self. There is something greater behind that, which is propelling all these actions. So once we realize that, then we stop being reactive. Then we become a little detached as people. When we become detached, only then we can respond to situations. So earlier, suppose somebody said something and I get triggered and I'll shout back immediately without even a second's pause. And then possibly I will regret it for the rest of the week. I shouldn't have said that. Now I have spoiled a wonderful relationship I had. So when this witness consciousness or this higher self and this discriminating power develops, we don't react anymore. Whatever answer we will give or whatever, it will be a well thought out and aware response. So that what is an aware response? At the same time that I'm getting triggered, I have enough self-control not to say whatever comes into my head, because I can already see the consequences of what that will bring. So I will pause a little and I will come back with a proper answer, right? So that is the development of discrimination. 428, some offer up their possessions as oblations, some their actions, others concentrate on withdrawing their energy by yoga meditation, offering it up as an oblation, and still others, holding strictly to a vow of self-restraint, offer up all their thoughts to God, practice introspection, and seek wisdom through the study of the scriptures. So these are various ways of connecting to God. So what does a Kriya Yogi do? A Kriya Yogi will offer up his or her energy through meditation. Okay. Others will, give their wealth in service. Others will, just offer up anything wrong they have done to the gods or offer their service in, whatever, cleaning a temple or doing whatever. So they offer People offer themselves up to God in many different ways. One practice of yoga offers the incoming breath, that is prana, into the outgoing breath, that is apana, and the apana into the prana, thereby through pranayam, control of the energies, rendering the breath unnecessary. So the yogic practice which we do at this stage, we are doing breath work. So what do? We constantly observe the breath. We take in the breath and then we observe the breath going out. So the inhalation is the prana, exhalation is the apana. And in doing that, in focusing on the breath, finally what happens? The breath quietens down to breathlessness. When we achieve breathlessness, that means we are now able to live through channeling energy. We don't need the physical form of breathing, okay? So we have offered up our breath to God. We are able to channel prana or energy, and we don't need to breathe. So how do yogis, we hear stories that yogis tell their disciples, dig me into this pit and cover me up and dig me up again 10 years later. 10 years later, the disciples dig him up and he is hale and hearty, nothing. He does not need to breathe. He simply absorbs the energy, the prana. He's channeling the energy. So the physical process of breathing becomes quite unnecessary. So we give up that physical process of breathing. In meditation, you will notice if you go deep enough that your breathing will stop when you are very, very deeply connected with source. You are simply channeling the source energy. You don't need to keep breathing. Why don't you need to keep breathing? Because the brain is quiet. Restless thoughts create carbon dioxide in the brain and in the body. And we need to breathe to oxygenate the blood all the time. So when we do a practice like focusing on the breath, what is happening? The mind chatter is going down because we are positively focused on breathing. Mind chatter goes down. Mind chatter goes down, carbon dioxide goes down, body is oxygenated. I don't need the pumping of the heart and the breath and all that. So perfect stillness inside and outside. And that is when you channel source. So yogis, by this practice of pranayama, give to God the very breathing process and becomes united in meditation. Okay. So Yogananda used to say, breathlessness is deathlessness. The less you breathe, the longer you will live because you are channeling prana directly. Okay. The physical breath, as we saw earlier, accompanies the upward and downward flow of energy through the Ida and Pingala nadis, through the energy channels, which I explained the other day. Ida and Pingala nadis in the spine. Indeed, it is this spinal flow of the energies known as prana and apana, which prompts the lungs to inhale and exhale. Actually, prana also, more broadly speaking, means energy itself. So while it also means inhalation, prana means that energy, right? Prana is para-prakriti as opposed to apara-prakriti, which is nature. So prana or pure energy is known as para-prakriti. This energy, prakriti means nature. This prana is present in nature. So it is para prakriti, and apara prakriti is, it is basically nature as nature and the energy behind nature. That's what it is. It is immanent as opposed to overt nature, the hidden reality behind the whole material universe. What is the hidden reality behind the whole material universe? It's energy. The slow, careful, conscious circulation of energy around the spine constitute the ancient science known since the time of Lahiri Mahashaya in the 19th century as Kriya Yoga. This circulation magnetizes the spine and redirects the mental tendencies called samskaras toward the brain in a way interestingly reminiscent of the realigning of molecules in a north-south direction in a bar of steel. Okay, so I'll just explain this. This is a bit much. Can you see the board? Okay. So this is the physical body. Within the physical body is the energy body and the astral spine or the energy spine. Right up to here. On the astral spine are the chakras or energy vortices. There are 7 main ones: root, sacral, solar, heart, throat, third eye or spiritual eye, and crown. This is the 1,000-petal lotus. Now, what did I say? Why did I think I needed to explain? Okay. So when we are doing the practice, what is happening? The Ida and the Pingala Nadis, there are 3 main energy channels. So they move like this. One moves like this and the other moves like this. Okay. Now, when we are bringing in the energy through the breath work, it starts to circulate. We will feel this energy, you know, it goes round, 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 and it goes up. But after some time, that going round and round will stop. Why? Because we are bringing, our main intention is to bring in the prana shakti into the Shushumna Nadi, the main channel up which the Kundalini will rise straight up here and out there. So this is the Shushumna channel. So slowly with our practices, what are we doing? We are bringing in the energy from the Ida and the Pingala into the Shushumna. So the body stops this going round and round. Early meditators will say, oh my God, I feel I'm going round like this. That is because the energy is starting to move inward now from the outer body. But we are trying to go in here. And as we try to go in here, what is happening? Our magnetism is increasing. Our field, our auric field is becoming very, very powerful and magnetic, so that whatever you need, you will start automatically magnetizing into your life, right? In the world of duality, there are 2 powers, electrical and magnetic. Our nervous system and brain are governed by electrical impulses that works on the physical level. When you go deeper So electrical energy governs thought, and the other power in our bodies is the magnetic power. Magnetic power governs feelings. Okay. Electrical energy, thought, magnetic energy, feeling. That is why we say thoughts are things. Anything you will think, you will manifest, but it will manifest very, very powerfully if you can feel it. Just thinking will not bring things to you. The thought has to be accompanied by feeling. Like we say, no matter how much of jnana yoga you have done, you have the discrimination, you know the techniques. If you don't have the feeling of devotion, you are not going to move in the spiritual path. So feeling, true feeling, not emotion, which is going up and down. True feeling is what creates powerful magnetism. Okay. So this is what we are trying to do with the yogic practices. We are trying to magnetize the spine or the Sushumna Nadi. So what happens?
Ask you a question.
Yeah.
I know it's a very, but what is really the difference?
I can't hear. Let me finish this. I'll come and take the question. Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah. Can I finish this? Then I'll come back to your question. Okay. Little bit left. So what is a magnet? Say this is a bar of steel, and the molecules in just a normal bar of steel are going all which way, up, down, sideways, whatever it likes. So it inherently does not have any power. Now, the moment we run an electrical charge through it, this bar of steel becomes a magnet. When we pass this electrical current, what happens? All the molecules start moving in one direction. And that is what creates the power of the magnet. Everything moves in one direction. And if it is moving upwards, then of course we are enlightened. So-called good things will happen to us. Now remember, we can also have negative magnetism where all the molecules are going downwards. That is how people like Hitler have power. They have such powerful negative magnetism that they will take a whole country along with them on the path to destruction. So there is negative magnetism, positive magnetism, and it is governed by feelings. So a Kriya, this meditation, what is happening? We are the breath. The breath work that we are doing is moving all the molecules in our astral spine upwards towards the higher chakras. And the more we practice, the more powerful our magnetic field is. So the magnetic field is huge in masters and gurus. If they turn up at any place, you will see thousands of people have gathered by sheer magnetism. Okay. So this is what we are trying to do. Raise the Kundalini, make our magnetic fields very powerful so that we can manifest our own growth and moving towards the God self. If we get caught in ego, we can become negative magnets and, get caught up in all those power games and siddhis. Yeah, somebody had a question.
Yeah, Urmi, I have two questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, one is that how does one know the difference between feelings and emotions? That's one question. The second is, example, Sri Ravi Shankar, he also has a kriya that, so many people have their own kriyas. So how is it that, is this kriya better, worse, same? What is,
So, okay, fine. So first is, what is the
are
difference?
they all the same?
Let me come one by one.
Yeah.
So the difference between emotions and feelings, true feelings don't change with circumstances. If you love somebody truly, no matter how badly they behave, no matter what the circumstance, it is unconditional. That is true feeling. Emotions are surface things, they will go up and down. So you can say the closest one can get to it, though not all mothers are like that. A mother's love for a child, like they say, na, only a mother could love this horrible monster. So a mother's love does not change. I'm not saying that for all mothers. So no matter if the child is a murderer, if the child is a drunk, if the child is a liar, the mother will always have hope for the child. That love does not waver. So that is feeling. Emotion is, I love you. The day you behave badly to me, well, you can get lost. End of story. That is emotion. So that's the difference between feelings and emotions. We are asked to connect to our true feelings. That is why we are asked to calm our mind. Sometimes people say, oh my God, how boring if everyone is meditating and then you're not excited or by anything. What the spiritual path is saying, please go beyond emotional excitement into the far deeper and richer area of feelings. And what are feelings? True feelings, these are always connected to source, to our soul nature. So you will see very high vibratory feelings like love, compassion, bliss. Those are source qualities. So when we tap into those, then we don't keep changing just because the situation has changed. My feelings don't change. Doesn't mean I've become a doormat, by the way. I will say what I have to say. It does not mean I have stopped loving you. Okay. So those are feelings and emotions. So the next thing was, different gurus give different paths. Nothing is better or worse. It is just that as egoic human beings, vibrationally, we are attracted to one or the other path. So the gurus, like we say, look at God as father, mother, friend, or lover, according to who you are. So similarly, the masters come in different forms to appeal to different kind of people. At the end of it, everybody is taking you to the same center. It is just that till we need the help of a guru, till we need the help of a god, I may be worshipping Kali, I may be worshipping Durga, I may be worshipping Christ, I may be disciple of a certain line of masters, right? It is my vibration which will bring me on that path. So there are many, many paths, all of them leading to the same thing. So nothing is better, nothing is worse. It's just what you are attuning yourself to. Okay.
Yeah, no, actually, I got that. Maybe I didn't frame my question properly. So in the Bhagavad Gita, when they're talking about the Kriya Yoga, which Kriya Yoga are they talking about?
Which Kriya Yoga? The Kriya Yoga which Krishna speaks of in Mahabharata. Okay, in the descending Dwapar Yuga, this is the book in the Gita. Krishna, this Kriya Yoga is what we practice. This is the most ancient one which Krishna taught to Arjuna. Okay. And then today it is Babaji Day, which is a good day to say these things. Then the reincarnation of Krishna was Babaji. Then Babaji appears to Lahiri Mahashaya, who is a householder. And he says it is time for Kriya Yoga to come out of the caves in the mountain. And householders, because it is the ascending energy age, householders can now start to practice. They don't have to give up their worldly life, but they can certainly proceed on the spiritual path because humanity is evolved enough to take such a practice. So this is the Kriya Yoga which we are talking about, the one which is mentioned in the Gita. Okay.
Thanks.
For me, so I have a question too. I want to understand, is it wrong to have be career-minded? Like all this is Maya, as they say. Is it wrong to, earn, like we all have to earn money for our family, for ourselves? Is it like, not, when I mean to say wrong is not wrong, but is it like, because our gurus don't say that we should be into all this. So I don't know, we are living in a world where the materialistic things are important. How do we deal with it? How do we,
No. It is see, because money has created a lot of power games. It has created a lot of egoic reactions. Money has got bad publicity, shall we say. Actually, money is nothing but an energy. You are meant to have as much money as you could possibly need or want. Please don't attach negativity to money. You are meant to be abundant. Source or God doesn't glorify poverty, okay? You are supposed to have as much of all good things that you can have. It is only when you go very, very deep spiritual path and you are on the path of complete yogic surrender to source that naturally you lose interest in having money. Naturally, you lose interest in having a family. Naturally, you are happy just by yourself connecting to source. You have no desire for anything that exists in the world. So till you reach that state, it is a very good idea to work hard and earn as much money as you feel happy with. It is simply an energy. Be open to all abundance coming your way. As much love as you want, as much money as you want, as much health as you want. In fact, Yogananda's most powerful disciples were the richest business people in America. So don't connect that money thing because it has, it's got bad publicity basically. But you just need to be neutral about it. It is something that makes the 3D world go round. You cannot move without it. So please have as much money as you like. Till the time you say, okay, I mean, I'm done, I'm not really interested in it, whether it's there or not there doesn't make one difference. I can sit in a tiny room and eat one meal a day and I'm blissful because I am connected to source. Till then, please have a great time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we need to also, there are many lessons which we have given ourselves before coming into the earth. A very powerful life lesson for you may be how to deal with money. Huge amounts of money will come. Now, are you going to become completely egoic and power hungry and look down on others because you have money? Or are you going to react differently? See, these are all lessons connected with every aspect of our lives. Depends how we are growing through those experiences that we have given ourselves. Okay. And in any case, if you don't have spiritual qualities like discipline, focus, concentration, you won't be able to make very much money either. So it is more likely that spiritual people will end up rich than others, you know, if they want. Okay, so I stop today then. It's already 5. We end with a prayer and we see you next week. Only Kriyabans remain, please. We'll do long meditation, okay? So, Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God, bless this gathering today and help to raise everybody's vibration in this room. We'll send out see, the hands are connected to the heart. So we are sending out healing energy from the heart to the rest of the world and to all of us. Please chant Om 3 times. It creates a high vibration. Om. Om. Shanti, Shanti. So for the rest of us, we can take a 5-minute break and be back for meditation, okay?
Only Kriyabans remain.
Yeah.
Everybody else, please log out.